Weight gain around the middle. Yep, it's not just you, it's really common at peri and post menopause. There is a hormonal element to it, but it's not all about estrogen. And trying to run more and eat less is not going to have quite the same impact on the belly fat as it used to, perhaps pre menopause. So, I want to explain about why that is and also offer you a better approach if that's what you want. Because, first off, just because I'm sat here talking about weight around the middle and weight gain and all of this, it doesn't mean to say that you should be focused on losing it. We're all individuals. We all have our own choices and our own ideas around how we want to live our life, what's comfortable for us, what we're confident and happy with. So just because I'm sat here talking about belly fat does not mean I'm judging you at all. I'm not. I'm all about choices. I'm all about giving people perhaps the missing information about what's going on in their own body around peri and post menopause, and then guiding them and supporting them in making the choices that is right for them. And we can all have a different approach to this, a different choice, a different say on how we want things to be. And that's absolutely fine. That's how it should be. So for most of us, it's okay to be carrying a little bit extra, but I do understand that it's quite all right for me to sit here and say that, and you might be feeling very different about feeling a bit more tight in clothes and waistbands not being comfortable, because it's often, for women particularly, it's linked to confidence and identity and how you feel within yourself and about yourself. And you know what? At perimenopause, we're already going through some pretty hefty shifts within ourselves. And this whole weight gain thing can just come in and compound that. So I find that when I explain what's going on for people and they can understand a little bit more, it can help them to, you know, make friends with their body a little bit more without battling what's going on. Doesn't mean to say you have to put up with this. There are some really effective things that you can do that I'll come on to in a moment. But it is a choice. It is your choice. So I wanted to ask you, did you know that there are different types of body fat, that your body contains different types of fat, and the fat around my belly that I'm more predisposed to be carrying now at my age and at post-menopause as well in my 50s, then this is more metabolically active than the fat on my arms and on my thighs and anywhere else in my body that's just under the skin. And what I mean by metabolically active is that it's not just an inert substance. And I know that sounds a bit funny, that, yeah, fat is just sitting there wobbling away and being really annoying and uncomfortable. But actually, it's not just sitting there. It's a bit of a chemical factory, and it's releasing substances into the rest of the body. And particularly this bit of spare tire that I've got around my middle is more prone to be doing that, to be a bit of a chemical factory than the extra that I've got on my arms. So it's why I'm saying this is I want you to understand that visceral fat around the middle is not the same as this on my arm or on my leg. It's not going to respond in the same way to lowering my calories or trying to do more exercise or more running. It's not going to respond to the same things in the same way. And also, what's important here is that this fat around the middle is when there's an excess of it, then it is linked to a cluster of health problems known as metabolic syndrome, which sounds a bit scary. And you know what? It is a bit scary because it's linked to problems to do with cardiovascular health, insulin management, increased inflammation, and we all know that increased inflammation, chronic inflammation, is the root cause of all disease. And we can even link cancer as well into this metabolic syndrome. So yeah, it is scary, but I'm not telling you this to scare you. I'm telling you this to really point out that you don't have to remove and focus your entire life on trying to stop the wobble in your belly to avoid those health problems. You do not need a flat stomach to avoid all those problems of metabolic syndrome. You don't need a flat stomach to feel better in yourself, actually, and to improve your confidence. And that's probably another conversation we could have another time. But neither do you reduce what's going on around your belly and fat gain and whatever you want to be calling it. Neither do you do that by restricting food groups or doing really extreme dieting or extra training runs, more cardiovascular. Moving more and eating less isn't going to have such an effect on the weight, and it's not going to have such an effect on the health risks of that weight increasing. So with menopause, as we know, there comes a shift in hormones, and these hormones interact with the whole of the body systems, other chemicals. Hormones are chemicals, remember, and they all interact in the body, which is important to remember as I talk about what's going to help with all of this. So 3 big changes that are giving us a predisposition to increasing the weight around our middle, giving us that bit of a wobble. 3 changes. So we're talking about estrogen, we're talking about insulin and cortisol. Okay, so there are a lot of changes that go on as part of menopause, a lot of changes, and there's more than 50 hormones that we could be talking about. But when we're talking about weight around the middle, estrogen, insulin and cortisol are the ones we're going to talk about. Now, let's take estrogen to start with. Brief bit of science on this one. When we talk about estrogen decline as part of peri-menopause, then we're recognizing that actually it doesn't drop off a cliff. It's not a sudden loss of estrogen unless it's a medically induced menopause. That's something else, not a naturally occurring menopause, as most of us have. So when it's a naturally occurring menopause, estrogen does decline, but it does this fluctuating sort of dance as it comes down, and then even at postmenopause, we still have some estrogen, just not as much. But the thing about this pushing us into gaining weight around the middle is the fact that progesterone is the first hormone, menopause hormone, to decline, and that one does drop off quite a nice smooth ski slope for most people. So what we have in effect is a smooth ski slope dropping down of progesterone, and estrogen doing its fluctuating merry dance as it starts to join progesterone. So in that time frame, which could be months or years, then we've got a period of time where there's more estrogen than there is progesterone. And it's that difference between the two that creates something called estrogen dominance, which can push us into gaining weight around the middle. So that's what I'm getting at. Yes, we have lowering levels of estrogen, but the relationship between progesterone and estrogen is the bit that can really exacerbate the weight gain around the middle. There are some really simple ways of helping this to be less of a fat gaining problem. There are some really simple ways. I'm going to come on to that at the end. So it's not always talked about that another of these hormones that are changing and changing in its relationship with how it works with the rest of the body and pushing us into more weight gain, particularly around the middle, is this insulin factor, the insulin. And we all need a good balance of insulin. I'm not talking about diabetes, that's another conversation entirely. But as part of menopause, as part of aging, we become less sensitive to insulin, meaning that we need more of it to do the same job in the body, which is all about blood sugar balance. And we need it to do that job to keep us alive, but it's all about energy levels. It's all about, many things in the body. But you know what? It's also about weight gain and keeping our metabolism nice and steady. So when we're having more insulin being circulated because we're a bit older, because we're into peri-menopause, we've got a higher level of insulin that's circulating around the body. And you know what? That's going to predispose us to weight gain around the middle. So there are some really simple ways that we can help ourselves to be encouraging a sensitivity around insulin, to encourage a lower level of insulin in the body. So coming on to those in a moment, you might have guessed already what some of those things are. The third change that I want to briefly talk about is about cortisol. And it's one of the most overlooked factors when we're talking about belly fat. And quite often people jump to the wrong conclusion and think I'm talking about stress eating and emotional eating. And no, I'm not talking about that. That might be part of it, but not quite what I'm getting at here, because you might already have noticed that stress is not just about emotional and mental stress. The stresses on our bodies that can be physical, that can come from after a hard workout, from after a hard run. We need that time to recover. And if we don't, we're putting our bodies into stress. We're putting our bodies into stress by not drinking enough water, not fueling ourselves properly before and after a run, by not having enough sleep. We're putting ourselves into a stressed state. And your body does not know the difference between good stress from a hard workout that's going to make you fitter and an unhelpful stress from not eating enough protein, not getting enough fibre, getting 1,000,001 emails on a Monday morning and trying to deal with all of those, as well as clear up the cat sick on the carpet and, all of the stuff that happens in normal life. These are all stressful things for your body to deal with. It's going to release stress hormones into the body. And I'm talking about cortisol here being a long-term stress hormone, rather than adrenaline being a short and sharp, fast-acting thing. Cortisol is much more of a released on a longer-term basis. Anything over 10-20 minutes, we're getting into cortisol territory. So we've got physical stress, we've got mental stress, emotional, all of these different types, and we've also got a hell of a lot going on for us in our own lives around peri and post menopause. So it's more likely, that we're going to be a little bit more sensitive to the stress. And when we're producing a higher than probably normal level of cortisol for a long period of time, it can tell your body to make some extra hormones. And one of those is converting those stress hormones and some of the building blocks of our sex steroid hormones into more estrogen. So being in a chronically stressed state and having a high level of cortisol can then push us metabolically, chemically, into making more estrogen from our existing fat cells. So we're creating and pushing ourselves into, remember that first one, more estrogen dominance, and then pushing ourselves into more fat gain around the middle. So yeah, it can come from different angles. Remember, we're kind of a chemical factory in here. There's a lot of stuff going on. But what are we going to do about this? Talked a lot about all the problems, all of the things to be aware of. What are the choices that I'm going to give you from here on? Because there's quite a lot of things that we can do. And you can always ask me about this. You can always get in touch if you need some extra advice. I'm here. I'm ready to help with any of this. So some simple solutions to start you off then. What can we do to basically stop this battle with ourselves, battling this belly fat, battling menopause transition? Understanding what's going on in our body is going to help with that. Supporting ourselves goes a step further. Supporting ourselves through this huge chemical process, this huge transition that's going on. Some of us really feel the effects of this. Some of us feel okay, and we kind of feel like we've transitioned through it okay. But there's a lot going on the inside, no matter how you're feeling. Supporting ourselves through this transition is crucial. So all the ways that we support ourselves is actually going to help to reduce the belly fat as well. It is not something that you're stuck with, but we do know that changes in estrogen, insulin, cortisol, they are going to have some effects on the body. They are going to have some effects. So let's just be realistic around what we're capable of doing, what we want to do, and the emphasis there on what do we want to do rather than what do I think I should do, because want is always a better motivator. And at the end of the day, it's your body to live in, nobody else's. It's your choice over what you do over this. So when I talk about supporting your body through these transitions, I'm talking about supporting our relationship with the changing chemicals, changing hormones, and how they interact with the rest of the body, with these stress hormones, with this blood sugar balance, and this kind of clean-up process of how we avoid excess estrogen dominance, excess insulin, excess cortisol. How do we do that? Okay, some simple things. You probably thought of a few already as you've been watching this. So give yourself enough time to recover in between your training sessions. Absolutely crucial. Absolutely crucial. And you know what? As we go through and get further into perimenopause, we need extra time for allowing the body to recover. So yeah, really acknowledge that and be respectful of your body of that. It does not mean that you're on the downhill. It does not mean that you can't run as fast, or, there's still really good evidence to say that we can increase our power and our strength and our PBs, but we've got to respect what's going on in here. And recovery between exercise, workouts, between running, whatever you're doing, is crucial. So what is part of that? Is part of time is going to be part of that. Sleep is going to be part of that. Fueling yourself correctly. Protein, eating enough protein. And we're going to talk about that in a moment as well, because strength work is absolutely crucial. If we are talking about metabolically active fat that does not respond very well to eating less and exercising more, what does it respond well to? Strength training. Muscle mass. Muscle mass is absolutely crucial. If you want to lose this, you've got to increase your muscle mass on your whole body. I'm not talking about crunches and sit-ups. God, no. Thankfully. We're talking about whole body moves that increase and maintain and protect really your muscle mass as you age, because we do lose it. We do start to lose it. It's a natural part of aging, and it's up to us as individuals to do what we can to protect ourselves around that and hold on to the muscle mass as much as we can. It's not about being a bodybuilder. It's not about trying to look buff and big. No, we can be lean, we can be fit, you can be your body shape, you can, it's all individual. We've all got our own shapes and sizes, but muscle mass is key when it comes to losing the weight round the middle. Okay, so that could be weights, it could be resistance training with your own body weight, weights, resistance bands, lots of different ways. Okay. Next thing, really, really simple. We've all got to eat, right? We all eat. I'm hoping that we all eat every day. So this can be quite a simple one, just to upgrade what we're eating, to eat things that is going to help, to think of supporting the systems rather than, reducing calories, because it's a different type of fat here. We can't use that same approach, not anymore. The hormones are playing a different game, so we've got to match that. So the foods that we eat need to match that. And how do we do that? Okay, protein, you knew I was going to say that. Fibre, eating enough plant and dietary fibre. And I don't mean Weetabix and fruit and fibre cereal. I mean plant fibre from vegetables, from plants, and I'm talking about everything from herbs and spices to nuts and seeds and everything in between. So having a good amount, we're talking like 500 grams of that a day, or thinking of it in terms of variety is going to help. It's going to help the reduce any estrogen dominance and take that out of the equation, because when we do that, we see a massive difference. And also the insulin factor. Fiber content is really going to help massively with this. So thinking of, I often say to my clients, build up to eating around 30 different types of plants and vegetables over the course of 7 days. Build up to it over a month or more to get that in. Okay, so because I've got to say this again, I know I'm a bit obsessed with saying this. The weight gain, the fat gain around the belly, it's not entirely a calorie problem. It's a chemical one. So we've got to do what we can to balance those things out and support the body as it goes through these hormonal shifts. Okay. So eating foods that stabilize blood sugar. Which foods do you think they might be? We've talked again about fiber, about protein, whether it's animal sources or plant sources. We've got a lot of choices there. So what foods do you think might not be so good when we're talking about blood sugar control? And of course, when we're helping our blood sugar, we're also helping our cortisol levels. All of these things are related. They're all related. So keeping our insulin levels low as we can. It's the protein, it's the fiber, it's the foods that are low in sugar and have a low glycemic response. So keeping I'm not going to say low carb, because that I'm not so keen on that. We still need carbohydrates. For fueling, for thyroid function, for all sorts of things in the body, but not relying on carbs as our main food source every day. And on lower training days, on days where you're a bit more sedentary, then really upping the stakes in the protein and the fiber content. That's going to help. It's going to help cortisol to stabilize and send less fat to here. It's going to help to balance blood sugar and keep insulin levels low, and it's going to help with that estrogen dominance factor. It's going to reduce that too. So really, really simple, but it's really applying it consistently, not always perfectly, but consistently. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about briefly is prioritizing sleep. Yeah, sleep is one of the big factors of it's a big factor when we're talking about menopause, because most women see and feel a change in their sleeping patterns and their rhythms around sleep, but it's also a huge building block towards losing any fat on the body, but particularly the metabolically active stuff around the belly. So doing all that we can to support ourselves with a good sleep routine, and we're talking about, if you've ever heard the term sleep hygiene, that's really worth looking up. And then there's some extras that we could do as women in our peri and postmenopausal years to support ourselves, to help ourselves have a better night's sleep. But that's a whole other video that could be made 10 times over. There's a lot to that. But if you need some help with it, you know where I am. Just get in touch. It's a common issue. There are, again, some simple ways of starting to improve that. So the reasons why you are more predisposed to gain weight around the belly is because of hormonal changes, but let's not blame estrogen for the whole thing. It's got a big part to play in this, of course it has. But there's also aging, there's also insulin, there's also cortisol, there's the way our body works at trying to help itself, trying to transition through these changes, and part of that leads us into holding a bit more around the belly. Whether you want to do something about that or not is entirely up to you. Not all women need to be focused on this, and nobody needs an absolutely flat washboard stomach. Some of us are gifted with those kind of genes. Part of it is genes, and some of it is about body shape and things that we are born with. But for the rest of us, it's not something that we all need to aspire to. And at the same time, I absolutely appreciate that there is this factor of confidence and feeling comfortable in ourselves, let alone our clothes. And when there's a lot of changes, physically, mentally, visibly, invisibly, to do with menopause, then when we're trying to control things to feel better within ourselves, it's often the case that weight is one of those things that we go to, because I should be able to control that and then I'll feel better. And then this won't feel so overwhelming, and that will feel easier to cope with. That's a normal response. So if that is you, then I would say focus on sleep. Do what you can to get a good night's quality sleep. Quality is better than quantity. Stress, cortisol, we can't change the chemistry that's going on in the body. We can't change the changes that are going on as part of menopause, but we can change our response to stress. Part of that is about recognizing that we've got different types of stress, but the body sees it all as the same. So ways that we can cope better with physical stress, mental and emotional, and even chemical stress from the foods we eat and the things we expose ourselves to. It's about supporting our body systems. So foods are going to help with that. Sleep's going to help with that. Recovery time and taking time off for yourself is going to help with that. Foods that help with stress also help with any problems that might be there with estrogen and any problems that might be there with insulin. You can have those issues without even getting diagnosed from the doctor, without needing any tests. Sometimes it's subclinical, sometimes it shows itself in stubborn weight gain. So eating the foods to help with those things is going to help the whole thing overall, and you're going to feel better because you know that you're doing the right things for you. So if you need any more help with that, please get in touch or ask me a question in the comments below. I'm quite happy to answer those questions. Okay, I'll see you soon.